The iPhone 17 Pro might be getting one of the most bizarre visual tweaks we've seen in years, and no, it's not about the camera bump, well, not directly. According to the leaker Majimbu, Apple could be moving the Apple logo on the back of the iPhone 17 Pro lower than it's been since the iPhone 11. Why? Well, if the camera bump stretches across the top, the rest of the back gets framed in aluminium with a glass cutout underneath. And so seemingly they're repositioning the Apple logo to be in the middle of that glass section. Leaker Sonny Dixon even backed up with some schematics, so this isn't just some random rumor, and I know there's already people calling this hideous, but I think we'll get used to it. And let's be honest, it's just a logo, it won't affect the functionality of the device, and also it's on the back, which of course you're not going to be staring at very often. Now with that visual twist out of the way, let's get into what the iPhone 17 could be hiding under the hood, because some of the upgrades could reshape the entire iPhone range, and that's not just hyperbole, because we've got vapor chamber cooling, possible price hikes, and a weird chip strategy that feels more complicated than ever. Let's start with the spicy upgrade that performance junkies are going to love and that Apple has never done before. According to leaker Majimbu, the 17 Pro and Pro Max might finally be getting vapor chamber cooling. Yes, tech we've seen in gaming phones and Android flagships for years, like the Galaxy S25 Ultra, could finally arrive on the iPhone. Majimbu even posted what looks like a copper thermal plate, likely part of this new system. If you're wondering how vapor chambers work, here's a quick breakdown. It's a sealed metal enclosure with a bit of liquid inside. When your phone heats up, the liquid evaporates, spreads heat across the chamber, then cools down and condenses, repeating the process. The result is way better sustained performance and cooler temperatures for the upcoming A19 Pro chipset during gaming and heavy usage. Before we get too excited though, a quick reality check is in order. Majimbu's track record is a mixed bag to say the least. They were right about the Mac style menu bar on iPad S26, but missed the mark with their claim about Stage Manager coming to USB-C iPhones, so take this with a grain of salt. Still, if this vapor chamber rumor is real, it would be the first time Apple's used this in the iPhone, and it could be one of those subtle under the hood upgrades that Apple quietly also leans on to justify a high price tag, which is not so great. You know what would be great for me though? If you took a minute to click that subscribe button, so do it now. It's free and would bring you the latest about Apple right in your subscription box, so please consider it. Join the Surround by gang now. Turning to the front of the iPhone 17, analyst Jeff Bu believes that all models, not just the Pros, could be getting a smaller dynamic island thanks to new metalens technology. This would allow Apple to shrink down the Face ID module by integrating the transmitter and receiver components. That's potentially a big change, if it's accurate, but rumors about the dynamic island have been bouncing back and forth. Minchiko says the island will stay the same size, and that honestly seems more likely. Apple's probably saving any big redesigns for the iPhone 18, which is expected to move to a punch-hole cutout and also introduce on-display Face ID. That said, a slightly smaller island this year isn't out of the question. Just like the iPhone 13 had a slightly smaller notch before Apple made the jump to the dynamic island on the 14 Pro, we may see a modest visual tweak. But if you're hoping for any big front-facing changes, they're likely happening with the iPhone 18, not the 17. The bigger visual differences this year will probably be with the back of the phone, especially with the new camera modules. Now let's move on to another hot topic, promotion on non-Pro iPhones. This rumor has picked up steam recently. According to Weibo leaker Fixed Focus Digital, the 17 and 17i could both feature 120Hz panels, but without variable refresh rates. That means they'll be locked at 120Hz, rather than dynamically adjusting based on the content. That sounds great for smoothness, but not so great for battery life. A fixed 120Hz refresh rate uses more power, especially for something like browsing or reading static content, and so personally, I'm skeptical about this. Apple has always prioritized battery efficiency, and using inferior LTPS panels for a fixed 120Hz experience seems like a step backwards. Plus, LTPO panels, which do support dynamic refresh rates, have been around for years. Here's the kicker. Ross Young, one of the most credible display analysts out there, says the iPhone 17 and 17 Air will use LTPO panels. If that's the case, there's no reason Apple wouldn't bring full ProMotion support to the base models, so I'm siding with Ross on this one. That being said, Apple might bring down ProMotion while keeping the always-on display exclusive to the Pro models. LTPO tech technically does enable AOD, but Apple might restrict it via software to push more users towards the higher-end models. But honestly, as someone who's turned off always on display on my 14 Pro Max, I don't miss it. It drains battery, and if I want to check the time, I just glance at my Apple Watch instead. Here's where things get even more interesting and a little confusing. According to Vapour, Apple might split its chips across the lineup in a way we haven't seen before. The base iPhone 17 could get the A18 chipset, while the iPhone 17 Air would get the A19, and the Pros would move up to the A19 Pro. The A18 will be built on TSMC's second generation 3nm process called N3E. Meanwhile, the A19 and A19 Pro will be built on TSMC's newer N3P process, which offers better performance and efficiency. On paper, this makes sense if Apple wants to create clearer performance tiers. But here's the thing, if Apple's already producing a bin version of the A19 Pro for the Air, why not just give that to the base 17 as well? It feels unnecessarily complicated. Still, I wouldn't be too disappointed if the base 17 sticks with the A18. Apple's chip upgrades from year to year have been pretty incremental lately, and the A18 would still be more than enough for most consumers. That said, I do think Apple will end up going with A19 across the boards, just for simplicity and marketing consistency. Now let's talk display sizes. There's good news here because the base model is getting larger. Ross Young says the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro both come in at 6.27 inches, which Apple will round up to 6.3 inches. That's the same display size as the iPhone 16 Pro, and it means the base and Pro models will look almost identical from the front. That's fantastic news, but it also raises a question, how is Apple going to visually differentiate the base and Pro model now? One possibility is slightly thicker bezels on the base model, but I hope they don't go down that route. The Pro Max, however, will remain at 6.86 inches, round up to 6.9 inches, and the 17L will land at 6.55 inches, round to 6.6 inches. If you're wondering why the Air isn't the full 6.9 inches like the Pro Max, it's reportedly due to structural concerns. Apple was worried it might bend more easily with a thinner, lighter body. Let's get to pricing, because this is where things could get controversial. The base Pro iPhone has stayed at $999 for years, but that streak may finally end. With the 20% tariffs on Chinese imports in effect, Apple may be forced to raise prices, but they won't blame tariffs directly. Why? Apple doesn't want to risk upsetting Trump or drawing attention to the tariffs, so instead they're going to frame the price increases as being driven by new features and design changes. That's a narrative they're likely going to push, because remember the Amazon story from April, when reports said Amazon might show tariff costs to shoppers directly, the White House called it a hostile act, and Amazon quickly scrapped the idea. So basically, Apple doesn't want to be caught doing anything embarrassing like that. So what kind of price bumps are we talking about? Here's a rough worst case scenario. The iPhone 17 starts at $899, the 17 starts at $999, the 17 Pro starts at $1099, and the 17 Pro Max starts at $1299. Not massive jumps, but enough to be felt, especially with inflation already hitting people hard. Could Apple soften the blow with more base storage? Possibly. It'd be great to see 256 gigs as the new baseline, and maybe 512 for the Pro models, but that also might be wishful thinking. It's totally possible the base model stays 128 gigs, with only the Air and Pro bumping up to 256 gigs. You may be wondering though, if the tariffs are the issue, why not move production outside of China altogether? Well, Apple is already shifting US-bound iPhone production to India. Tim Cook did confirm that most iPhones sold in the US between April and June did come from India. However, the Pro and Pro Max will still have to be primarily made in China because India's manufacturing capacity just isn't there yet, especially for the more complex models. To sum up, we're looking at Vapour chamber cooling, a potentially smaller dynamic island, ProMotion trickling down to non-pros, new screen sizes, a weird chip strategy, a possible redesign of the rear logo for the first time in years, and looming price hikes. It's shaping up to be an interesting year for the iPhone. Compared to how incremental the iPhone 16 series was, the iPhone 17 series will bring some more exciting changes, but I'm just curious how people are going to receive the price increases, especially since older models like the 15 Pro are dropping in value fast, and so going with an older refurbished iPhone has become even more enticing. Are these changes enough to get you excited though, or do you think Apple's just adding minor upgrades while raising prices? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.